In this week's episode, I'm joined by Valerie Hope, CEO of Connect to Joy. This week, our conversation is about accessible Scandinavian style, longer refills, cooling off hot flashes, and more. Hey there, my name is Bernadette Smith. Welcome to 5 Things in 15 Minutes, my weekly show where I bring good vibes to DEI. That is good vibes to diversity, equity, and inclusion with a little dash of corporate social responsibility. What I've found is that there are lots of news stories about what's going wrong in the world and lots of negative data. But there are also a lot of things going right. That's what I like to focus on. I search for DEI stories that we can be inspired by and learn from. My hope is to inspire you to experiment with some of these inclusive actions and policies within your own organization to help you build a more inclusive world. Welcome to the show, Valerie. Let's get started.
Oh, thank you. And I'm so glad that you made me change my business name to Connect to Joy so that matched your aesthetic and your brand.
Oh,
Amazing.
perfect. Hey,
I'm
hey,
kidding.
Valerie, can you tell folks a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I live in Dallas, Texas, and like you, Bernadette, I'm also a speaker and I'm a leadership coach and also an author, aspiring author. And part of my work, like you, wanting to bring good vibes and focus on things that are positive as well, and put as much energy there. I like to help the people that I work with, my clients, to tap into joy, right? To tap into the areas of strength. That's an internal job, by the way. It's not just an external, because I think once we connect to the joy that we have within us, we connect to the things that we're good at, we connect to the positives, the purpose, everything that we have internally, we then have some power and influence externally. And so that's the magic that I like to bring to the world.
So you help folks start with their own personal version of joy, whatever that means to them, so they could build
Mhm.
that to then save the world. Is that basically it?
Save the world, save themselves. Whatever seems important to them, yes.
That's awesome. I love that. And is the work that you're doing like what sort of how are you presenting it? Is it more coaching or workshops or speaking? Like how is that? How are you bringing this into the world, into your clients?
It's Yeah, it's a little bit of everything, honestly. I started out primarily doing coaching, leadership coaching one on one and small groups. But I also get hired to do keynotes. I've also done facilitation of workshops and classes, long term things with groups of people. So those are some of the common vehicles, but the message is the same. I can tailor it to one or to many. And the idea is that help people really tap into who they are and what they bring. Sometimes we have to clear some things. You have to clear the cache, like you do on a computer, right? We have some programming that's maybe outdated or doesn't serve us anymore. So I support people in identifying what that is so that they can be more conscious of themselves and get connected to themselves and other people, and then ultimately be more creative with how they want to influence the world around them.
I love that. Well, I'll be honest. Up until a few years ago, I was a workaholic, obsessed with my career. I'm still obsessed with my career. I'll be honest. I love what I do, but I also used to be a lot more in a hustle mindset,
Mm.
and now I have relaxed quite a bit, and I have a couple of hobbies. So, but I think that there are a lot of people like me who are just sort of heads down, do the work, don't really have a lot of external pursuits. How do you encourage folks to figure out what lights them up and what brings them joy?
Ah, so I think first, I don't have any judgment around work being some people it's a joyful pursuit, right? It fulfills a
Mm-hmm.
need to contribute, it fulfills a need to serve, it fulfills the need to be creative. I mean, it fulfills so many needs. I think the
True.
challenge is that when we are not connected to the need that the activity brings, then we are lost, right? So, for example, some of the hobbies, I know you do comedy, right? That may fulfill a need for self expression, for
Mm-hmm.
humor, right? I play tennis. I'm not a competitive person, so it doesn't fulfill a need for competition, but it fulfills a need for me for connection, for physical expression, for
Mm-hmm.
play, right? And so what I help people identify is what need is their activity fulfilling. And if they can
Mm.
articulate that with a need that is life giving, right? There's some aliveness in the needs that they have, meaning no one's saying, I have a guilt for, I have a need for obligation of the responsibility of being the eldest in my family. Like if people come to that conclusion, that's usually an indication that maybe what you're doing is not really tapping into the joy. So that will either
Mm.
mean you change what you do or you change how you do it,
Mm.
right? So those are some simple conscious activities that I think will help people identify and kind of suss what it is that they're doing and how it fulfills them.
Mm. All right, that makes a lot of sense. I love that. Well, sort of along those lines, in this week's Five Things newsletter, I wrote about my comedy class, which I've written about a few times. It's a weekly class. It meets every Tuesday night, and without fail, I pretty much wake up on Tuesday morning and I'm like, what the heck am I going to write about for for class tonight? Which I think is pretty much the mo for everyone else in the class as well. But we all figure it out. We all show up. One of my classmates last week was recently laid off. She didn't have any prepared material to work out, and so she riffed, and it was great. And I think for one reason or another, a lot of us have been feeling heavy these days. But class, we crack up, right? It brings that joy that you're talking about.
Mhm.
And I did a little research and I learned that laughing actually swaps cortisol, which is a pretty intense hormone, with dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins. Like it literally brings joy. And
Yep.
so I just wanted to share that because what a gift of shared laughter, right? What a
Hmm.
gift to be in a
Hmm.
room of people laughing and connecting in that way. And so that is my wish for everyone this week. Valerie, can you relate to any of that?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. First of all, I think that that's a great antidote to stress. I think we have been sold a bill of goods that being stressed helps us solve problems more creatively. Like, I've been laid off, I need to find a job, I need to, oh my gosh, there's a sense of urgency maybe, or survival mode kicks in. But that's usually the worst state of mind that we could be in to do anything. So, first of all, kudos to your classmate that she didn't just, I'm not going to go anyway, I don't have anything to say, or that she was in, such a state that she couldn't relate to any of the things that you all, her classmates, were going to do. She went to a supportive environment where she could hopefully shake off some of that, right? Pump herself up with some dopamine and oxytocin and all the things. And that innately gives us a better frame of mind. We're not in that, mammalian brain, I think they call it, where we have the amygdala hijack, right? We are able to access that prefrontal cortex, that way of thinking that makes us more creative and more resourceful, and all of those things that are so positive. So yes, kudos. That's brilliant.
Laughter is a gift. Seek the
True
laughter
medicine.
and
True
seek it in
medicine.
community. Yeah, get yourself, no matter where you live, find an open mic, find a comedy special to watch. There's so much great talent right now.
100%.
Okay, well, let's move into this week's good vibes. The first story this week comes from IKEA, which has a new line that introduces accessible home items like a shower chair, two step stools, and bathroom accessories designed with non slippery feet, handles, soft edges, drainage holes, and a high visibility dark finish. So the idea is to embed inclusive features into everyday furniture by taking away the burden from marginalized people with disabilities to sort of have to figure this out on their own and or have higher out of pocket costs for specialized items.
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of some of the work done around design thinking. I
Mm-hmm.
remember, I don't know if it was Oxo Grips or some other brand. I might be making up the brand, but the intent was there where they actually used the people they used to test their products were people who suffered from things like arthritis or had different disabilities, where they designed the handles so that anybody in that spectrum could use it, right? A child, an elderly person, if you had arthritis, and base the design off that, right? So you kind of go to the outlier and use the outlier to inform. And I love that idea of IKEA using that same mindset to create
Mm-hmm.
something more inclusive.
And it's just good for everyone, right? It's just,
Mm-hmm.
it creates a win-win. And when it's built that way from the start, then it doesn't have to feel like this extra thing. So
Yeah.
I love it.
Greater market share. What? Business? Capital?
Exactly.
Well, that's one of the benefits, right? Of having that's a positive thing for capitalism, right? It really it behooves people to think bigger because you can, more inclusion creates usually a bigger marketplace and more clients, and you can serve more people.
It's good for everyone.
Yeah.
All right. The second story this week comes from the state of Washington, which has, where the governor signed a new law requiring health plans to cover a 12-month supply of hormone therapy prescriptions, including for testosterone, which ensures uninterrupted care for trans individuals who have been approved by their medical providers. So the reason this is significant is because it's a rare emphasis on refill duration, which tackles systemic bias in insurance design that disproportionately burdens marginalized communities with frequent pharmacy visits and added costs. And this law is designed to mitigate anti-trans legislation that's out there and that may restrict access to care.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny. I used to have a podcast. I don't know if you knew this. It was called Not Quite Strangers, where I introduced two people who don't know each other to have a
Oh.
meaningful conversation.
Hmm.
And I had a podcast episode where I invited two individuals who were both transgender, one transgender male, another transgender female. And one was good vibes because they both talked about their experience, and some things were difficult, but we
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of laughter about their experiences. Learning about the other gender, right? The gender that
Mm-hmm.
they were adopting. So when I think about individuals like them, and the conversation and the journey that they've taken, and you talk about this legislation, that's what it brings to mind. And I think it's so important for us. Some of these things in the news seem so far away, or they might feel controversial until you know someone who would benefit
Mm.
from it. And so I think the key for me is connecting with people and understanding that person's lived experience gives us a different point of view when we hear something like this that could be so meaningful and game changing for them or a community they belong to.
The power of stories, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the courage that people have in sharing their stories, which is not always easy.
Yes.
All right, big props to Washington State. So hopefully other states will proactively follow and expand trans healthcare coverage.
Yeah.
All right. The third story this week comes from CVS Health, which became the first U.S. firm to earn Medovia's menopause friendly accreditation. They did so by overhauling their menopause policies, training, environment, and culture to support their menopausal colleagues. So, CVS expanded its learning hub with manager focused e modules on accommodations and resource signage, launched peer support groups, added specialized providers to its network. And this CVS is addressing the 1.8 billion in U.S. workdays lost annually to menopause symptoms.
Wow. I don't know about you, but I think being in menopause made me work harder. So I don't know if I took any time off. And I always have my handy dandy, yes, like fans for potential hot flashes. But I recently, and I think I'm on the other end now of that experience. I recently had this moment where I started to see that there was so much. Went through extreme, right? My mom never talked about menopause growing up. I didn't even know what that was. And
Mm-hmm.
then where I am, I feel like I'm talking about it all the time because I didn't want there to be any kind of shame or misunderstandings about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Normalizing it. But I also saw that there was a point in time where all of the media that I saw was around fixing menopause. Somehow
Mm-hmm.
that this part of life was another problem for women to resolve. And
Mm-hmm.
I just, for a moment, just thought, you know what? There's been a millennia of women and that have lived, thrived, had children and held jobs and taken care of communities that have experienced menopause. And I'm also now on the end that I don't want to. It's not a problem to solve. It's a stage of life to honor. And I
Mm.
love that there are, programs that help acknowledge that there's perhaps need for some people to take care of, self-care is so important at any stage of life, but for us
Mhm.
not to marginalize people because of a stage of life that is inevitable. You can't turn the clock back. You can be more productive, and there's ways to be even more productive by taking care of the people in your, companies, organizations. So
I love that reframe and so succinctly put. Stage of
I've had
life
to
to
work
honor.
on that. Stage of life, right? Well, don't you feel that way, right?
Yeah,
You can't help it.
yeah, absolutely. I feel like I'm in a, and I'm not. I'm in perimenopause, but I definitely feel like it's just
Oh, you had
one.
to say that, right? Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, she's younger. Yeah, what? So what? I'm just in peri. I'm sorry. I'm in post.
I love it. I love it. All right. The fourth story this week comes from Marriott, where the CEO, Anthony Capuano, publicly reaffirmed their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So what happened was there was lots of talk about funding cuts, compliance confusion, and Capuano paused with his team to basically do a lot of research and really emphasize that they are in. They are all in. I think he specifically said, we welcome all to our hotels and we create opportunities for all, and fundamentally, those will never change. Then he received 40,000 thank you emails from his team members all around the globe. So this really matters especially when white men speak up in leadership. It really matters.
It matters. So I worked in hospitality for a long
Mm-hmm.
time, and I worked for Hyatt. No shade to Marriott. Cheers to you, Marriott. I'm not gonna begrudge that. I love that commitment. And at the time, we had the commitment of taking care of people so they can be their best. And what I loved about that, at the time anyway, it wasn't pros as a DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion initiative. It was just that, in hospitality, you take care of people. That's what people in hospitality do. And this idea that that vision for Marriott doesn't change because of the terminology that's being used. Like, if you put all the facade, not facade like it's fake, but the the labels, if we put all those things to the side, the essence here is you're in an organization that is designed to take care of people, to provide service, to make a contribution, to create comfort, to create connection. That's really the focus. The focus is not whether or not the terminology is allowed or not, if the spirit is in the same thing, right? So hands off, my hat's off to them. And I love organizations that have continued to double down in their commitment for contribution, regardless of what the label is.
Well, and we know that so many of the brands that have been under attack have been customer-facing brands, and Marriott is one. And
Yeah.
and the fact that they're saying, you know what, we are holding strong. It really does matter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The last story this week comes from Athletes Unlimited Softball League. After 3 decades of breaking barriers in Major League Baseball, Kim Ng made a rare, bold pivot to women's sports as the inaugural commissioner of the Athletes Unlimited Softball League. So Ng earned 3 World Series rings and became the first woman GM of a men's pro team. But what's really cool is that this new softball league has rotating rosters, individual performance incentives, and a leadership team of legendary women athletes that gives underrepresented women major decision-making power. So there's a lot of equitable governance that's part of the way this new league is set up, and so very, very cool to sort of see that being built from the ground up.
Yeah. That one I had very little reaction to because I don't follow baseball or softball at all. Not to say that I needed to, but I do think that, taking our talents and skills and the experiences to organizations that may not have access to the same level of talent or the same pool of talent, it's always a good thing. My mom always told us to bloom where you're planted. And
Mm-hmm.
so it sounds like, this Miss Ing she replanted herself. She has replanted,
Mm-hmm.
repotted herself, knowing that she can bloom in a lot of other areas. And I think that speaks well for people also wanting to bring some equity and wanting to bring some exposure and share, expand their abilities and expand other people at the same time. So
Yeah,
kudos.
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. She's building something from the ground up that allows other folks to be equitably included from the beginning. And I think
That's
that's
awesome.
the way it's done. All right. Well, let's move into this week's good vibes to go. I'll share my good vibe to go, and then I'll invite you to share your good vibe to go. So, my good vibe to go is to go see the film Sinners in theaters. I recommend seeing it in theaters. So, Sinners is a vampire film. It is rated R, but it's also full of subtext and tons of symbolism, which I encourage you to read up on after the fact. I loved it. I thought it was really smart, beautifully done. Lots to sort of digest after seeing it. Have you seen it, Valerie?
It does not appeal to me. So no, no.
Fair. Okay. Well, what is your good vibe to go, Valerie?
Well, I don't want to give any shade. No shade to your vibe.
It's all good.
There's plenty of people who I'm sure would love that.
Yeah, they
I
all
think kind
the box office numbers show that a lot of people.
of 100%, 100%. So my good vibe to go kind of connected to the first part of our conversation around, decreasing the amount of cortisol and all these other stress hormones and increasing some of the feel good hormones. And part of it is by doing, I call this a freeze frame. So I mentioned it in my Instagram. I have a little post that I put together on Instagram and LinkedIn to show this, but essentially it's taking a moment and thinking about memories or experiences that make us feel good. It could be
Hmm.
memory of petting our favorite animal. It could be a weekend shared and laughter with friends at a comedy show. It could be your favorite piece of music. So first of all, having on the ready like feel good memories or experiences that you can think
Mm.
about. The first thing you do with this after you have that kind of menu is take some time and take a breath, and you breathe, feeling the breath move in and out of the area of your heart. And as you continue that heart focused breathing, you bring to mind one of those memories. It just makes you feel good. It makes you think more positively. And you continue that. Sometimes it takes a minute or two of that type of breathing and bringing that memory and reliving that memory specifically to help calm down that stress response that we might have. And then if we're trying to solve a problem or address a challenge or a goal, from that more objective space, you can ask yourself, hey, what can I do that's even more effective than what I've been doing?
Mm.
Or, what's another way to look at this challenge I'm experiencing? And because we have kind of decreased all that cortisol that helps us think survival thoughts only,
Yep.
we've just decreased it enough. Now you have access to the part of your brain that can be even more creative, even more inventive, even more connected and patient. Right. So that's my good vibe, is to think good thoughts and do so intentionally on
Mm.
purpose, because they're the medicine and the counteraction to stress.
Mm. I love it. All right, Valerie, thank you so much for sharing that with everybody. How can
Pleasure.
folks get in touch with you?
Well, I've already mentioned a couple of my socials. So LinkedIn for sure. You can just look for Valerie Hope. And then also Instagram, Valerie V Hope is my handle. So
Great.
follow me on Instagram, and then this book is coming out soon. And so in my website, valeriehope.com, I use my name for a lot of things. So I think you'll put a link, probably
Mm-hmm.
Bernadette, I'm sure, in the show notes or something.
So, well, thank you for being such a fun guest. We have cracked up, which, there. Thank you for listening to 5 Things in 15 Minutes. I hope you found yourself inspired by at least one of this week's stories. If you did, would you mind sharing it with a colleague and leaving us a review on your favorite podcasting platform? And if you don't already get my 5 Things newsletter, join at 5thingsdei.com. I'm Bernadette Smith, and I'll see you next week right here for 5 Things in 15 Minutes, bringing good vibes to DEI.